It's a mess at WB Games. What's up, guys? Welcome to Comic Chronicles. Warner faced a massive loss after the flop of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, but the drama doesn't stop there. Friends, there's new news revealing behind-the-scenes information and the current situation at WB Games. The Wonder Woman game is at risk of being cancelled, and we've also heard that games based on Constantine and The Flash have been scrapped, while a new Batman game is set to go into production. There's a lot to unpack in this news, so stick around until the end of the video to get all the details, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. If you're a superhero fan and don't want to miss any updates regarding games, this is the place for you. Subscribe, and you'll always be well informed about everything happening in DC and Marvel. Thanks a lot, and let's dive into the video. Bloomberg, a well-known finance site, recently published an article about Warner Bros. Games, discussing the current state of various studios producing games for Warner, such as Monolith Productions, WB Games Montreal, Avalanche Software, and Rocksteady Studios. The article even brings new insights into production details that were previously unknown to the public. It really reveals everything that's happened over the last few years involving Warner's gaming division, from games in production that may be cancelled to the incompetence of the previous management, and much more. The article starts by discussing David Haddad, who was the head of the games division at Warner but left the position this January after 10 years in charge. Despite this lengthy tenure at WB Games, the first thing highlighted in the article regarding his exit is that it was no surprise to those who worked with him. Their only question was why it took so long. So, according to the article, the work environment under him wasn't exactly great. It's also noted that Warner had a strong financial return with the success of the game Hogwarts Legacy in 2023, but 2024 saw a $200 million accounting write-down in May due to the painful failure of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. This was followed a few months later by a $100 million write-down linked to the failures of Harry Potter, Quidditch Champions and the fighting game Multiversus. Warner was banking heavily on these games in 2024, but the losses ended up being huge. Haddad's management left significant gaps in their portfolio that will likely persist for the next 1 or 2 years, according to insiders. The company was counting on Suicide Squad and Multiversus to generate revenue this year, but instead, they ended support for both games. In the wake of this miscalculation, Warner Bros. Now has few upcoming releases, aside from an updated version of the 2023 hit Hogwarts Legacy, a LEGO title, and some mobile games. It's really a critical situation for WB. Warner Bros. CEO David Zaslav told investors in November that the company's video game business was substantially below its potential. Now, moving on to the games that DC fans are eagerly awaiting news about, the article also provides updates on the Wonder Woman game, which was announced back in 2021. Unfortunately, guys, the news is not good. This game is one of the company's biggest bets in development but has struggled to become established, according to people familiar with the project. At the beginning of last year, it was restarted and swapped directors. The game has already cost more than $100 million, according to sources who requested anonymity while discussing non-public information, and it's still years away from release, if it even makes it to market. This information is quite concerning. We don't know if this game will ever be released. Any hope we DC fans had of seeing something new from this game this year is completely dashed. Moreover, the article mentions J.B. Parrott, who is the chief of global games and streaming at Warner Bros. He expressed some time ago a desire to focus more on live service games, and surprisingly, despite all these failures, he is still at WB Games. Recently, he stated in an interview that the company remains optimistic about video games and that he will take on a larger role in the management of the division while the company searches for Haddad's successor. Parrott stated, "We will return to profitability in 2025. We won't return to the profitability we want for the next 2 to 3 years. It will take 2 to 3 years to rebuild and redefine to the levels we want to be at, but the recovery is immediate in terms of transitioning from losses to profitability. This means that by 2025, Warner will not have the same losses as the previous year, but big profits won't come anytime soon." But how did Warner get into this situation with gaming? What really happened? The article continues as follows. According to interviews with 24 current and former Warner Bros. Employees, the lack of a strong, cohesive vision during Haddad's tenure marked a tumultuous period where Warner Bros. Struggled with multiple reorganizations. From the moment he took over, they were faced with the acquisition by AT&T, followed shortly by the arrival of Zaslav, which resulted in Warner Bros. Discovery. It seems Haddad didn't know what to do during these transitions. The article goes on to say this led to years of chasing ineffective trends and wasted development time. Along the way, once respected studios under Warner Bros. Umbrella suffered reputational hits, lost key team members, and burned through hundreds of millions of dollars. In the information about Haddad, it was mentioned that he is a graduate of Harvard Business School and spent the first part of his career at toy and entertainment companies before joining Warner Bros. Games in 2013, becoming head of the division 2 years later. Notably, colleagues describe him as a polished executive who doesn't appear to spend much time playing video games, which sometimes made it challenging for subordinates when trying to discuss the nuances of product decisions. The team also complained it could take months to get responses to their questions about both major and minor issues, from the next game from a studio to whether they would participate in the annual E3 trade conference. This was really problematic. He simply wouldn't respond to his own team. At subsidiaries like WB Games Montreal and Monolith Productions, team members felt stuck in limbo while waiting for decisions from Haddad and his team. Executives in Burbank may have felt pressured to avoid making big calls at the time because the entire organization was surrounded by uncertainties. Shortly after Haddad started, the division's parent company was acquired by telecommunications giant AT&T Incorporated, triggering a long antitrust lawsuit, and then, shortly after, it was set to merge with Discovery Incorporated. These corporate changes left heads spinning and generated a constant buzz that the video game division could be up for sale. Martin Carrier, a former head of WB Games Montreal, said, "There was a lot going on politically within the organization," adding, "The focus on games may have gotten a bit lost." This leads to the conclusion that the issues weren't entirely caused by Haddad but were part of the larger problems Warner was experiencing at the time with leadership changes. The widespread chaos at Warner left the gaming division entirely unsure of where to go. In 2023, the landscape seemed to be stabilizing, especially with the launch of Hogwarts Legacy, the best-selling game of that year. It was also during this time that Zaslav reorganized Warner, deciding it would not outsource game development, unlike Disney, which does, as seen in the case of Marvel Rivals, where the developer was not part of Disney. The article concludes this coverage of WB Games by stating that Zaslav said Warner would reduce the number of games it produces, focusing on only a few franchises. From here, the article provides information about each studio within WB Games. Starting with Monolith, which is developing the Wonder Woman game, the article states that Monolith Productions was once a favorite within the Warner Bros. Gaming group thanks to the successful game Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor in 2014. The sequel released in 2017 did well but didn't surpass the first title. After that, the studio began working on a new franchise that would experiment with procedural narratives. However, Warner Bros. Executives were not particularly interested in creating new characters and universes from scratch, according to those familiar with the discussions. They suggested to the Monolith team that they should attach their project to one of the many established franchises of the company, such as Game of Thrones or something from the DC Comics portfolio. The developers, who earned critical acclaim with the unique Nemesis narrative system of Shadow of Mordor, where fallen enemies could return with memories of the protagonist's actions, struggled to insert another existing franchise into their nascent ideas. The game languished for over 3 years in a sort of deadlock, where Warner Bros. Executives seemed to know it wasn't going to happen but didn't take decisive action. In 2021, Warner Bros. Finally canceled it. Monolith's head, Kevin Stevens, and most of his directors quit and started a new studio with rival EA. The remaining team soon turned their focus to a Wonder Woman comic book-based game. An early version of Wonder Woman tried to reimagine the Nemesis system with the game's heroine befriending enemies, and honestly, I have no idea how that could work. It didn't sound like a great idea, but this concept was discarded in favor of a more traditional action-adventure game. Now, the future of Wonder Woman remains in question due to challenges following the leadership changes at Monolith and issues surrounding the game's technology. So, despite having spent $100 million, there's no confidence that this game will succeed, which means it could very well get cancelled. Now, moving on to WB Games Montreal, the studio that developed Arkham Origins using Rocksteady's engine, they started supporting other Warner projects after Arkham Origins performed well. However, when Haddad's tenure began around 2016, it was also the period when live service games like GTA Online and Destiny were starting to take off, and that became Haddad's goal, to land a live service game. Unfortunately, WB Montreal didn't fare well with this. During that time, the developer initiated a new game aiming to be a live service game, which led to the creation of Gotham Knights. Initially, it was intended to be a live service game, but they changed their minds later on. Guys, after this article, it was confirmed what many already suspected: Gotham Knights was indeed initially designed as a live service game. Despite all this, the article highlighted that the studio wanted to launch a sort of sequel, a version 1.5 of the game, where they would fix all the issues it had and even improve it. However, Warner rejected the idea and reassigned WB Montreal to support other studios developing games, likely Rocksteady, which was working on the Suicide Squad game. And here comes another piece of news. While part of the team supported other studios, another part was trying to develop new projects, and that's when news surfaced about a John Constantine game. Haddad supposedly liked this project but neither approved nor disapproved it, leaving the studio unsure of what to do next. After that, they attempted to pitch other projects, including a game featuring the Joker or a game based on The Flash. The Flash game project progressed somewhat but was ultimately cancelled following the flop of the Flash movie in theaters. Any chance of a Flash game vanished at that point. After the Flash project died, part of the Montreal team left the company since nothing was getting approved. Now, onto Avalanche, the studio that developed Hogwarts Legacy. There was uncertainty about how the game would be received, but after it became a major success, Warner wanted to invest in more games for the franchise, which led to the creation of a Harry Potter Quidditch game, but that flopped in sales. In fact, it was off the back of that failure that Zaslav remarked that not everything related to Harry Potter is guaranteed to sell well. Warner is truly realizing that just making a live service game won't cut it. The audience wants quality games. The article wraps up discussing Rocksteady, where after the success of Hogwarts Legacy by Avalanche, Haddad invested heavily in the next major title for Warner Bros., Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, which had been in development at Rocksteady Studios for over 6 years. Telling the team that it could also be a billion-dollar game, he and his team greenlit TV commercials and successfully pushed for coverage on Warner Bros.' own CNN. But Rocksteady was known for its single-player games and had attracted staff who knew how to make such titles. The shift to Suicide Squad, a multiplayer shooter, felt awkward and led to burnout and turbulence. By the end of the production, Rocksteady heads Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill left to start a new company, recruiting former colleagues to join them. In the end, fans didn't have an appetite for another online shooter, and the game flopped. Rocksteady abandoned plans for content after the first year, wrapping up the storyline with a hasty animation that rolled back some of the more controversial narrative aspects, revealing that the superheroes presumed dead were actually clones. Now, Rocksteady wants to return to Batman for a single-player game, but according to insiders, this new project is years away from being launched since making AAA games takes years to complete. Folks, this whole article reflects the chaos that is WB Games, and to change that, they need to start producing great games that the audience truly wants to play, rather than forcing live service games or lesser quality titles. Competition is fierce these days, and they really need strong games to stand out. That's what happened with the Arkham series. All the success came because those games were top-notch, and when they came out, they grabbed attention for everything they offered: single-player experiences with compelling stories, great gameplay, and impressive graphics, as seen in Arkham Knight, where the graphics still hold up today because they are that good. Thank you so much for being here in the video. Comment below your opinion regarding this news about Warner's games. I really want to know what you think. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you're always in the loop about everything related to DC and Marvel. Check out these 2 videos popping up on your screen, I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Thanks again, and see you next time.